Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and you have, as you see with me, we have Mr. Najeeb Jung, who was the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. He was also the Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia University. He has served India in the capacity of a civil servant for nearly 40 years. He's also a very prominent leader in the civil society of India. He's part of the debates that shape India's identity and politics. And also he has been engaging, I guess, after retirement with the direction in which the country is going. So we are very honored to have you on the show. Najeeb Saab, welcome again to Khanversations.
Thank you, Faisal. Thank you very much.
Najeeb Saab, the elections have taken place, and we will talk about what happened in the elections. But there are two narratives now. Those who talk about how India has changed significantly as a result of this election outcome. In fact, the current election is an indication or a measure of how India has changed significantly. But when you look at the government, it's the same prime minister, the same cabinet. In fact, all the key positions are held by the same people. So you see a certain continuity in government. So my first question to you is, even though there might be the same people in office, do you think that there's going to be a change, a shift in policies and the manner in which India is going to be governed going forward from these elections?
Khan Saab, there is a constant discussion over this. The question you have asked is actually seminal, and it's in the mind of most Indians. That whether things will change. Now, one thing this election showed, and that is that perhaps the idea of invincibility of the Prime Minister and his party, that is considerably diminished. Because even when you people overseas thought that this was a done deal, and the Bharatiya Janata Party would romp home easily. Well, that has not happened. And as you have read, the lead of the Prime Minister himself is considerably reduced. He had won by some 4 lakh votes in 2019. It's come down to 1.5 lakh. And also the Bharatiya Janata Party, which was really impregnable, has lost in its areas of great influence, Uttar Pradesh being one, and particularly the constituency of Faizabad, where the great temple dedicated to Lord Rama is located, Ayodhya. But not only Faizabad, but also districts surrounding Faizabad. And districts east of Gorakhpur show that the influence of the Bharatiya Janata Party has reduced considerably. Now, that is one aspect of this election. So, the Prime Minister has had to ally with different parties, part of the National Democratic Alliance, the NDA, which has two formidable, shall I say, allies. One from Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Naidu. Now, Mr. Naidu is a very senior politician. In fact, in politics, he's senior to Mr. Modi. Mr. Naidu has been around in national politics for over 35 years.
Yes, I remember.
Similarly, he won his own state of Andhra Pradesh in the assembly elections, which were held simultaneously, getting over 100 seats, decimating virtually the government that was in power. And the second ally is Mr. Nitish Kumar. Now, Naidu has come back with 16 seats in parliament. That's a lot of seats. And his other ally is the Janata Dal United, where Mr. Nitish Kumar has come back with 12 seats, making this government completely reliant on these two allies. Nitish Kumar himself has been a minister in the central cabinet since 1991. So if you recall, if anybody follows Indian politics, Nitish Kumar was a minister in the VP Singh government that had defeated Rajiv Gandhi and come in power. So he's that senior. Now, why I'm making this long statement is that you can guess that these stalwarts of Indian politics are no pushovers. So they will have their say in government. And that changes the scene for Mr. Modi and his party. Mr. Modi had been in power, if you include his tenure as Chief Minister of Gujarat, and now his, which was what, 13 years, and now his 10 years as Prime Minister of India. So Mr. Modi has seen himself in power for, let's say, 22, 23 years. Yeah. And that is unalloyed, undisturbed power of a single individual. So it will take a lot of adjustment in the way he functions. And therefore, the success of this government will depend on the scale of adjustment that Mr. Modi will be able to make in the coming months. They can make it difficult for the ruling party. And that is what I presume they will be bargaining for. Both Mr. Naidu and Mr. Kumar need money. They need funds for their states. Having said that, it is very difficult for the central government to pass additional funds to these states. As you know, we have a system of parting with funds. So, and it's divided as per a ratio that of all the funds that come in, 41% goes to the states and 58% remains with the central government. So to break that rule is awfully difficult. Mr. Naidu may be in a better position because he's building a new capital, and the center may be able to, make a special provision for a new capital that he wants to make in Amravati. However, this is going to be a difficult relationship. I mean, the BJP obviously has its own compulsions vis-a-vis minorities, as their own policies vis-a-vis minorities, particularly Christians and Muslims. On the other hand, Mr. Naidu and Mr. Nitish Kumar have upheld values of secularism all their lives. So we are in a very interesting phase of Indian politics, where we have the major party, which has a very dedicated agenda, which it has had for years, and relying on allies with different agendas. But having said that, the allies need money from the central government. So what happens now is anyone's guess.
Sir, when I came to the US, I came here in 1992, and I watched the Bill Clinton election and the debates here. And I was not a political science student when I came here. I was an engineer with an MBA. And to those who are watching Khanversations, please, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and also don't forget to share it with others. What had happened was, when I came to the US in 92, I was not tuned to political science as a student because I had studied engineering and business in India. But when I came here and watched the debates between Bill Clinton, Ross Perot, George H. Bush, etc., I felt that the politics in India, in the US, was different, and it took me some time to figure it out. And what I realized was that in Indian elections, there's a lot of politics, whereas in the US, there's a lot of discussion and debates of specific policies. So the debates was around policy-related issues, that this is the policy. In fact, when we were looking at the Senate and the congressmen, there was so much of discussion about their voting behavior. How did they vote on which bill? That was very prominent. And so I saw that missing even in the current. I mean, the broad discussions about Labharti-related policies and the future of the Constitution, etc. But a lot of it was also identity politics. So after looking at all of this, and also looking at the new cabinet, I realized that it is quite possible that these two gentlemen, Chandrababu Naidu and Nitish Kumar, want some special considerations for their two states. And if they get that, or partly that, they are going to leave a lot of national related policies to Modi and his cabinet, especially foreign policy. For example, I don't think Chandrababu Naidu is going to be worried about that. So I think in terms of issues, these partners of NDA will not probably want to be part of every policy discussion as long as their desires or their special requests are being adhered to. So for Prime Minister Modi, the challenge is how to keep these two happy by finding ways to give perks to the state, and then the agenda on everything else might remain. So for example, if they want to go ahead with the Uniform Civil Code, I believe that it is a good thing, but there is a lot of resistance to it from minority communities and not just Muslims. So would Chandrababu Naidu or Nitish Kumar then try to leverage their role in the cabinet or in the parliament to say, this is not a good policy? I mean, will they try to dictate other national policies to Prime Minister Modi? That is the key question, isn't it?
Well, you put the nail on the head, actually, because like I said, the first thing for both of these guys is money.
Yeah.
Can Mr. Modi give them money? And like I said, the dispensation by the Finance Commission of India, we have a Finance Commission every 5 years. And of course, Nitish Kumar has been asking, as Naidu, special status for these two states. That is impossible. That's a no-no. In fact, the chairman of the Finance Commission, the erstwhile chairman, he just retired, made a statement in Patna itself that the question of giving special status to Bihar is irrelevant. Now, that's the chairman of the Finance Commission, a statement 2 months, 3 months ago. So giving money out of the kitty becomes very, very difficult. Those days are gone. I mean, in the last election campaign, Mr. Modi had campaigned and said, I can give any amount to Bihar. It didn't happen. Mr. Naidu, like I said, perhaps can get some additional funds for Amravati. But how much funds? He needs in thousands and thousands of crores. He's building a capital. He needs roads, he needs flyovers, he needs water supply. You know, can the central government take that fund away from others and give only to Andhra Pradesh because he's an ally? I have my doubts. Number two, you said that normally in the US, you speak of policies. That used to happen. In Mr. Modi's first election, for instance, in 2014, he spoke of development. He spoke of developing things for the poor. That rhetoric changed in this election, unfortunately. And Mr. Modi was forced to change track, and as you know, it became unpleasant. Mr. Naidu has made it clear, even before he was sworn in, even before the government was sworn in, his son, who's an active politician, made a statement in Hyderabad that we give 4% reservations to Muslims. We will not change that. We give a lakh of rupees, which in your terminology comes to, I think, what, $1,200, $1,300, something like that. We give that subsidy for pilgrims going on Hajj. He said that we are raising the salaries of imams. For your audience, I can tell you, imams are the guys who go on the pulpit to call the faithful for prayer.
Yeah.
So he is raising money for the imams. He will give funds to the Waqf board. And that has set off a chain of reaction, because yesterday in Maharashtra, the ruling party, which is actually an ally of the BJP, said that we will give some large amounts to the Waqf board. So this is completely contrary to the BJP's actual raison d'etre. It's a party which has resisted, because they say that we treat everything as equal, everyone as equal. We don't believe in distinguishing between minorities and the majority community. But here you have your allies doing that.
You know,
so there will be grave friction
in the party
on issues such as this. I mean, Nitish asks for a national caste census. It's exactly the same that was asked by Rahul Gandhi. Now, you mentioned the UCC. It's almost impossible the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs day before yesterday said that we are going to impose the UCC. It's a done deal. The very next day, Mr. Tyagi, who's a very senior member of the JDU, said that no, UCC can come only after a consensus. A consensus in India, Khan Saab, is not so easy to arrive at, particularly with parties like JDU, which come from Bihar, is a large Muslim population. Now, right or wrong, you are right. Muslims may be wrongly opposing the UCC. There are many, many good aspects to the UCC. But the mistake that the government has done is they have not disclosed to anyone what UCC contains. So before agreeing to the UCC, I must know exactly what the draft of the UCC prepared by that committee consists of. You can't impose it on us. But let me go further. The government of India has said that we will impose CAA. And they've given some 8 non-Muslim nationalities in Bengal. Now, the basis of the CAA is the National Register for Citizens, the NRC.
Yeah.
In this atmosphere, how does the government of India go ahead with the NRC? People won't let your enumerators come into their homes because they are scared that should there be an NRC and you are asked to produce all your papers, which many, many even educated people in India do not have, then does it mean that Muslims and Christians or so on will be turned out of India? I don't think that can happen. It's a population of, 25 crores in India.
Yeah.
So I don't know in how many millions you call it in America. But
250 million.
So that's now, you can't sort of say that of the 250 million, let us say, that even 5% don't have their papers. Can you turn them out?
The 250 million, according to the 2011 census. Yeah, 2011 census.
Yeah.
I think the non-Hindu India is probably as big as the United States of America, which is the third most populous country in the world, which is around 300. I wanted to point out to this issue that when Prime Minister Modi talked about that we're going to get 400 seats and we will take major decisions, bade nirnay lenge. It was a very clever statement because everybody started dreaming about what their dream policy was. And a lot of people who were Modi supporters who also watched this channel kept telling me that the key item on Prime Minister Modi's third term was going to be the abolition of the Waqf board properties all over the country. And I'm sure that, but the fact that both Shiv Sena and Chandrababu Naidu's Telugu Desam party has made positive, or shall we say, strengthening the Waqfs in their states, is that a strategic thing or it's just a coincidence, or are they actually sending a message to Prime Minister Modi?
Hasab, number one, the slogan of 400. Initially, I think that Mr. Modi and his people were convinced that they would get 400 and more. As the election unfolded, this dream started to vanish. And because we had 7 phases in elections, after each successive phase, the dream was diminishing. And so the party started saying that 400, we just spoke to psych the opposition. We knew we wouldn't get 400. It was to psych you guys, and you believed it. Now, that was the stand that they took after rethinking the ploy. So 400 is out. Number 2, on the Waqf. I am afraid people in India don't understand the philosophy behind the Waqf. Waqfs in India are hundreds of years old with genuine papers. People like your ancestors and people like my ancestors have made a trust for the poor for charity. The Waqf by itself, by definition, is a charitable trust in the name of God. Waqf means to donate in the name of God.
Yeah.
So, and these are not 1, 200, but they go into thousands in India. So to take away the Waqf from the Muslims is an impossible task. I think advisors of this government don't understand either the reason behind the Waqf or the nature of the Waqf, or the fact that the Waqf is a legal entity and cannot be taken away. And thirdly, that the quantum of work involved makes it impossible. And you don't want constant trouble in your belly if you want to start troubling 20% of your population. Every family in India has some Waqf or other. My grandmother has donated a lot of her families in Delhi and Chandni Chowk. There are shops which are Waqf. My father-in-law in Lucknow has made all his property Waqf, which the monies, the funds from it go to charity. So it's impossible what the government said. And Mr. Naidu and the Shiv Sena party in Mumbai are rightly saying or hinting that you can't do this, you can't play around with this.
One of the things that is remarkable about this election is the disparity between vote share and seat share. So if you look at Bharatiya Janata Party's overall vote share, it just went down by 0.7%, not even 1%, even though it did lose over 50 seats. But what is interesting to me is that in Indian politics these days, people seem to miss the most obvious things sometimes, and I find it quite remarkable. So, for example, there's so much talk about vote bank politics. Vote bank politics is another way of saying that opposition parties are into Muslim appeasement, etc. But if you look at the upper caste vote for the Bharatiya Janata Party, I mean, you can see the vote bank politics right there, isn't it? So the BJP has successfully created a vote bank of Hindu upper caste voters who don't seem to vary at all. The country's mood is separate, but the performance, I was looking at the CSDS survey, which shows that there's nearly zero change in the upper caste Hindu vote. About just 1 or 2% went to the Congress. So this whole vote bank politics in India, which has now successfully created a Hindu vote bank, does that put a pressure on Prime Minister Modi? Like, for example, one of the thought that occurred to me is that, did Modi lose Ayodhya because he did too much Hindutva, or did he lose Ayodhya because he didn't do enough Hindutva and lost Hindu votes because they feel that he's not doing more than what they want?
Khan Sahib, he could not do any more of Hindutva than that was done. So that's quite clear. The Bharatiya Janata Party, since...
Oh, one second. I just wanted to add one more thing, because one of the things that I constantly keep hearing is that the temples, Hindu temples, are controlled by the government, and one of the demands of the Hindu establishment is to let the temples be free, and the government should not control the money that comes into these temples. So a lot of the religious people do not like the control of governments on Hindu temples, and that is one of the demands of the Hindutva that they think Modi has not fulfilled.
No, number one, Mr. Modi couldn't have done any more than what he did for the cause of Hindutva in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Construction of the temple is only part of it. But the sense that he gave to the people of being what people say Hindu Hridaya Samrat, the king of the Hindu heart, he did all that to project that image, and the Indian diaspora in your own country believes that.
Yeah.
So, but the BJP has always, since its inception, which was in its earlier incarnation as the Jana Sangh, has always had a dedicated voting cadre of Hindus, which comes to 15-16% from the good old days. It started changing in the year 2000 and later, and the numbers increased substantially in 2014, the figure that you mentioned. Why did that happen? A, of course, is the attraction of Hindutva, that why not? But B, I think Mr. Modi came in with an enormous promise of development. So he actually motivated, you see, voting BJP does not necessarily mean voting Hindutva. Some of my colleagues have voted the BJP because they had greater expectations from Mr. Modi. And the 2012 to 2014 period of the Congress party was terrible. The period from 2004 to 2009 of the Manmohan Singh government is a glorious period of Indian development.
Yeah.
But come
Higher growth
2011,
rates, higher growth rates than even Modi's.
yes, so come 2011-12, that government was enveloped by an agenda by rumors of corruption, some right, some wrong. But this is perception. The public's perception was that this government is backing corrupt people, and there is a lot of corruption there. So the Congress lost. 2014 to 2019, Mr. Modi consolidated that position because, again, within the Congress party, and the crores of rupees that were spent in demolishing Mr. Rahul Gandhi's image. So you had monies coming in to build up one person, and you had monies going in to demolish one person. That was sticking. That was sticking. So unfortunately, and then 2019 happened, which was really the peak of the success of the Bharatiya Janata Party when on their own, they got more than 300 seats.
Yeah.
I believe that every government has its rises and its troughs, and the charisma wears off. Now, you mentioned the word appeasement, the concept of appeasement. A lie spoken 1,000 times becomes the truth. And so when you tell repeatedly that Muslims have been appeased since the 50s, people have started believing in it. The Indian middle class believes in it. They have forgotten the word affirmative action, which any sensitive government here or in your country believes in, that if you are a minority, then there will be hand-holding for the weakest. There will be affirmative action. So the word affirmative action is forgotten. We've had the Sachar Committee in India in 2004, which proved that the economic and educational status and the social status of Muslims is abysmal. It is in many places less than the Dalits.
Yes.
And so Mr. Sachar and the UPA government understood the need for affirmative action, but they could not do it. And they could not do it because at the end of the day, you want votes and you don't want to be charged with appeasement. So it was a catch-22. Now, what you say about the Hindu vote, let me say that India remains a secular Khan Sahib because India is a Hindu country. 80% of us are Hindus. The DNA of the Hindu is secular. So there may be 37% attracted to Mr. Modi, but of the 37, how many are backing Hindutva and as vis-a-vis against Muslims or Christians? That number is not so large. They can be very vociferous. They can make a lot of noise. They can help in communalizing the police and the administration because they can get in power. But that doesn't stick. We have been through these periods in Indian history since 1947. And we've seen these rises in communal fervor, but we've also seen rapid declines. And hopefully now, with these two allies, which are actually like pillars of this government, we will see a dramatic decline in the pro-Hindu rhetoric, or the tragic rhetoric that we heard during elections. Time will tell.
There are two narratives about India's economy. One thing the Prime Minister keeps talking about is India's rapid GDP growth. Well, you have the world's biggest population, so inevitably that will contribute to a higher GDP. But there's also the story of tremendous unemployment, inequality in the society, especially the more educated you are, the higher the likelihood among the youth that you would be unemployed. So the percentage that is being identified by the International Labour Organization is that perhaps 44% of the youth with higher education is unemployed, which is twice as worse as that of Bangladesh in South Asia. So there are these two narratives going on about India's economy. And while there's a lot of discussion of caste and religion in trying to explain why Prime Minister Modi's performance was not as much as he accepted, is there an acknowledgement, you think, in this government that perhaps they need to rethink the way they do the economic policies and foreign policy rather than focusing on just GDP growth? Can they think of focusing on distribution of income, making sure that there is greater equality in the society? Not only that, but also to focus on, I think the biggest challenge for India is creating 1 crore jobs every year. That is the challenge with this huge population, that India needs to create 10 million jobs a year. And is the government policy is going to focus on that, or they are going to continue with what they're doing?
Khan Sahib, it's again a catch-22. I am sure that policymakers in India are well aware of the unemployment problem. Part of the reason why Mr. Modi has lost this election is unemployment. Everywhere you went during the election campaign, people said, all our youth is unemployed. You go to a village and you see youngsters sitting in grounds, in chaurahas and outside their homes playing with mobile phones. This instrument, this mobile phone, is a most dangerous instrument today going, because what do? You're 18 years old, 19 years old, you're educated, you're unemployed, but you're watching pornography. It is harming my youth. So I am 100% sure that government is aware of this and policymakers are aware of this and they are sensitive to this. The Manmohan Singh government has started that thing of Manrega, where you gave employment in rural areas. Unfortunately, in the last 4 or 5 years, that dropped. Their employment there dropped. Government didn't give enough funds. But the government is carried away by an impression of rising stock exchange and the fancy cars and the big buildings and the new cities that have come up. I mean, if you go to Gurgaon, you see that it is like an American city. So to use the Urdu word, chaka-chaund, the lights around you are so glamorous that everyone is getting carried away with this new wealth that is being created. And that the government needs to certainly apply itself. Government has got a very bad name, Khan Sahib, because the impression going around was that it is in the hands of a couple of industrialists in India.
Yeah.
And those two names have become like an anthem on Indian lips. So government has to fight that impression. Unfortunately, I think they have not done so. And maybe in the coming months, we hope that they will address this issue. But there is no quick fix to India's poverty. We are, in fact, very poor in the rural areas. We need to address our health. We need to address our education system. We need to put all this rather than just build roads where you can drive fancy cars. I need roads in the rural areas. I need drinking water in my villages. I need health for people of my age. I don't want to travel 200 kilometers to the nearest public health center. Those are things that need to be addressed.
Najeeb sir, one last question to you. That is it possible that the diminished image of Prime Minister Modi, he was on the verge of becoming God with all of this rhetoric, but his diminished image and his slightly weakened position in government, do you think that is a blessing in disguise for the country? Because maybe now his cabinet and his energies will be focused on actually addressing the developmental challenges at home and making a course correction so that some of the bigger problems such as unemployment, job creation, etc., will get more attention in the third term, especially since nobody wants to have an early elections because the cost and etc. Do you think that it is going to become a blessing in disguise?
Early election is in nobody's mind at the moment. We will all strive for a 5-year term, and we should hope that Mr. Modi is going to go through this period as well as he can, And therefore, because he's such a practical person, I think, and he's so experienced that he will see the need for course correction. I think a lot of us in India are hopeful that there will be a course correction, that the communal rhetoric will die down, that issues of unemployment will be addressed, the issues of caste conflict will be addressed, the issues of regional differentiation will be addressed. The Northeast, we're having a lot of problems. We will address those. But more than that, we have to concentrate that we have disturbed borders. We have a very troubled border in our northeast with China. We have a troubled border in the northwest with Pakistan. We have to talk of relations with them or address those issues to the best. If we are going to lose our time and attention on fighting amongst ourselves, then those larger issues will not be addressed. So therefore, I think, and all of us hope, post these election results, that we will indeed see a great course correction. And these allies will help us and help this government keep on the straight and narrow.
Sir, you heard Mohan Bhagwat's speech that he gave, in which he talked about arrogance in campaign. He talked about Maryada. He talked about disrespecting the other, the importance of building consensus, and the fact that we are not at a war with each other, rather we are in competition. So he provided a very comprehensive ethical and moral critique of the manner in which Indian elections were conducted. And in the past also, he has talked about how are we going to look for a shivling in every mosque? How long are we going to do this? So he has suddenly become, I mean, the chief of RSS has become the voice of sanity on the right side of the Indian politics. So do you think that his speech, which many of us have interpreted as a direct public criticism of the manner in which Prime Minister Modi conducted the elections and targeted Muslim minorities, do you think that is going to have an impact, especially since you have had a dialogue with Mohan Bhagwat in the past? Do you think that is that what he was trying to say? And number two, is it going to have an impact on the rank and file in BJP and others to tone down their anti-minority rhetoric?
Khan Saab, as you know, I've been in touch, I and my friends have been in touch with Mr. Bhagwat since 2019.
Yeah, we talked about it on our show last year.
I've had several meetings with him. Yeah. And much to the annoyance of many, many secular people, I do believe that Mr. Bhagwat means business. He wants to leave the past behind him. He wants to take everyone along with him. And I have no reason to doubt his sincerity. Now, I have been around in government for 45 years. I have considerable experience in gauging people. So I, from my side, have no doubt that Mr. Bhagwat and his close associates desire to take everyone along. The days when the RSS had an agenda which was completely anti-Muslims and anti-Christian may actually be over. They may be thinking that the best way forward is to keep everyone along. That's one. And therefore, I think that Mr. Bhagwat, in his last speech, look, the speech is not an ordinary speech. He was talking to young trainees in Nagpur, so he's talking to an RSS crowd, where he's giving this message. So it's a very important occasion. It happens only twice in a year. So Mr. Bhagwat gave that message. And the message is clear that please take everyone along. Mr. Modi is a very powerful prime minister. I think, to use the term that, Mr. Bhagwat can go beyond this, it's impossible. He has given an indication that let's take everyone along. Now, how much the BJP will take this to heart, I can't say. There is within the RSS and within the BJP a hardcore element which carries animosity against the minorities. Can that hardcore element be tamed under current circumstances? That's Mr. Bhagwat's endeavor. Now, any organization which is so huge, it takes a lot from one individual to do this course correction in a few months. I think Mr. Bhagwat is trying, and over the years, he's trying to dilute that earlier agenda. For instance, you may have heard that Guru Golwalkar had written a book called The Bunch of Thoughts. Yeah. And that bunch of thoughts actually is the Bible of the RSS, where he made some very controversial remarks about Muslims.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Bhagwat has expunged those remarks from that book.
Yeah, the new edition.
That takes a lot of courage to expunge remarks from the Bible. And he has done it. So whenever we have met him, we have come away with the impression that he means business and he'll do his best.
You
The
know,
extent to which he will succeed is anyone's guess.
one thing that I think should be highlighted here was in your discussions, and as you shared in our previous conversation, one of the things that Mohan Bhagwat had demanded was that Muslims stop calling Hindus kafir. That was one of his demands. And he said, and I understand what it means. So, for example, when I met Jews in Morocco, when I met Jews in Morocco, I said, why do you like the Moroccan king so much? They said, look, the Moroccan king doesn't, he calls himself Amirul Mominin. He says he's the commander of the believers, not commander of Muslims. So when he says believers, we are, as Jews, we are also believers of God. And so he's also our commander. It becomes inclusive rather than exclusionary. And so what Bhagwat, one of his demands is to go back to extend this whole concept of Ahl al-Kitab to Hindus. But what is remarkable is that he has done his part of it. He has edited their Bible, where a lot of animosity was expressed towards Muslims. And I think the challenge is now for Muslims, especially from the religious establishment, where they have to come up with a theology of inclusion and share it more widely.
You are absolutely 100% right, sir. Mr. Bhagwat did raise the issue of being called a kafir, which we clarified, because we told him that kafir is a non-believer, but you are a believer. And so there is no angst in us about, and no sensible Muslim in India calls a Hindu a kafir. I live in India. 99.9% of my friends, my close friends, are non-Muslims, are Hindus. My daughters have married outside the community. So it's obviously they're not kafirs. The Muslim clergy refuses to come out of itself. As we say, this little hujra which they create for themselves. For instance, in 1991, when Prime Minister Chandrasekhar was there, he had almost resolved the Babri Masjid issue. It was the Muslim side, led by Sayyid Shahabuddin, led by Zafar Jilani and the so-called Muslim Personal Law Board, that created impediments and resulted in this wave of anti-Muslim feeling in this country. The Shah Bano case is a first-class example of Muslim stupidity in this country. Here was a woman who was demanding just 67 rupees or something like that as maintenance from her husband. The Supreme Court granted that. And the Muslim clergy and the Muslims of all kinds went to town and made Rajiv Gandhi amend the law. Now, that raises a lot of hackles. So I think much is required of the Muslim community to change their ways of thinking, to understand that the world has to be much more inclusive. We have to forget. Look, I have repeatedly said that we have a lot of madaris, the madrasas in India. Is it not? It's wonderful to teach theology in the madrasas. It is wonderful to teach the Quran to these young students. But you must teach mathematics. You must teach modern languages. You must teach English and physics and chemistry. Because this young lot of Muslims will come out on Civi Street to be citizens, to be proud citizens of India. So we have to do a lot of soul searching. Muslim community must do a lot of soul searching if things are to improve. Tali do hath se bachti hai. Just to say that Modi raised the Hindutva temperature and made Hindus anti-Muslim is not being entirely fair. So we must appreciate the efforts of people like Mr. Bhagwat. And that is why I'm carrying out that dialogue, trying to bring the Muslim clergy and the RSS together. I've had meetings in my home where we called in the Jamaat-e-Islami and the Jamaat-ul-Ulama-e-Hind and the RSS ideologues to have a chat. Unfortunately, elections have come in and, we couldn't continue that dialogue, but we will continue. And hopefully, our entire hopes rest on prayer that we will succeed.
Najeeb Saab, thank you very much for speaking so candidly, so articulately, and some of your thoughts are genuinely positive and uplifting. I wish you all the success with this dialogue, And once again, thank you very much for coming on Khanversations and talking to our audience. And to those who are watching Khanversations, please, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and also don't forget to share it with others. Najeeb Saab, thank you very much for being on Khanversations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.